guys, Brad from simpleguitar.com here, and welcome to another video. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about arpeggios. Now, I did another video on what arpeggios are, where they come from, how you can get started finding them, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can go further with them. Before we talked about like single string and two string arpeggio patterns, today we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to talk about 3 strings and going beyond 3 strings, and also what the heck do you do when there's a chord progression? How do you apply arpeggios then? So we're gonna go over all that stuff, so let's go ahead and just dive in. Okay guys, so I zoomed in so that this will be a lot easier for you to see what the heck is happening on the fretboard here. So quick review what an arpeggio is. An arpeggio is basically the notes of any chord, but instead of playing them simultaneously, we're gonna play them individually. Now, normally we get used to playing these block-shaped chords that we play all the time when we're learning guitar, right? But arpeggios can be found all over the guitar, and you can find them everywhere as long as you know the notes on the fretboard. Now, if you've never started learning the notes on the fretboard, here is a video for you. I'll link to the top here and down in the description that you can go check out, where I talk about how to start memorizing the notes on the fretboard. And it's not as hard or as daunting as it sounds. There is a lot to do, but honestly, once you get started doing it, the sooner the better, because this is the information that really sets you free. So here's what you're gonna do. In a nutshell, another way to think about an arpeggio is every other note of a scale. So let's say that we have this scale right here. If I take every other note of that, so the first note that I played, the third note that I played, and then the 5th note, that's an arpeggio, okay? And that also happens to be the same notes that make up this chord. So those are the notes of a G major arpeggio. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how we can take these arpeggios, because in the last video I talked about what you could do is you could play a chord, like play your G chord, and then you need to know where your G's are located on each string, at least between your 1st fret and your 12th fret. So for example, I have a G here on my 6th string, I have a G here on my 5th string, I have a G here on my 4th, a G on my 3rd, on the 12th fret or open, and then on my 2nd string it's the 8th fret, and then on the 1st string it's my 3rd fret again, okay? So the thing about this is what you would do is you would then play that chord, and then you can use a cool little 2-string arpeggio shape like I just played, and then play that on the next string. Right, so that's an easy way to get started, just getting familiar with where these are. But how do you apply this musically? So what happens when you're playing a solo and you have to solo over a chord progression? You want it to sound good. Well, knowing your arpeggios and how your arpeggios relate to each other is really, really going to make your life a lot easier. So for example, let's take a really, really simple chord progression where we just have G and we have C. And what this chord progression would do is just alternate between G and C. And it would be really simple for you. Right? To take something like that. So how would you play something that sounds good over that? Well, instead of just sticking to like the G major scale or the C major scale, playing the arpeggios is the same notes that are in each chord. So for example, when I'm playing this G chord, if I play my G arpeggio here, so it's the 5th fret on my 4th string, the 4th fret on my 3rd string, and then the 7th fret on that 3rd string, that is going to sound good. Right? And so if you target those notes, it's going to sound great. But then what do you do when you hit C? Well, then you just switch to your C. So you have to know where your C note is and where that arpeggio can be played. Right? So if you spend a little bit of time starting to learn where these individual notes are, you can start to use these really simple arpeggio shapes on 2 strings or 3 strings. So let's look at that. So for example, with our G chord, the notes that we are going to have are G, B, and D. Now, in the other video that I did on arpeggios, we stuck to pretty much 1 and 2 string arpeggio shapes. But a lot of times you can do stuff on 3 strings or 4 strings or 5 or all 6. Your arpeggios aren't limited to only 2 strings. So let's look at what we would do if we did our first, second, and third strings for this. Well, on my first string, I have a G note right here. On the second string right nearby it, I have a D note. And now I have to find a B note near that, and that would be on my third string on the 4th fret right here. So that would make up a good G arpeggio. Just on those 3 strings. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video and the arpeggios, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button below for me. And if you want to be notified every time, hit the bell notification and you'll be notified every time I put up a new video. Now let's dive back into these arpeggios. Now, after that, once I know where that G arpeggio is, I want to find C. So where can I find C? Well, the notes for the C arpeggio, or your C major chord, is C, E, and G. Well, I have a G note right here already. So let's look nearby so I don't have to move too far from where I am right here for this G arpeggio, right? Well, I can use this G note right here. And on my second string, there's an E note right here on the 5th fret. And then on my third string, there's a C note right there on the 5th fret as well. So check that out. What I can do is I can play that C arpeggio and then switch to my G arpeggio. And then as the chords play, then I would just alternate . Now I'm just playing these arpeggios straight up and down. But that's where you can start, and then you can get more creative with them as you get more comfortable. So that's a really, really simple, easy progression that you can do. It's just G and then C. And you can do this with any pair of chords. So let's look really quick. What would it look like if I did C, which we have a C arpeggio right here, right? And like A minor, right? Well, the notes for A minor are A, C, and E. So your C is part of that. So we have our C note right here, right? And we have our E note right here. Well, there's an A note on that same fret. So I can easily just play my C arpeggio and then play A minor. And that's a good way to practice between that. So what I would recommend is start out with something really simple, like one of these two chord progressions, or you can make your own. You can use this with any chord progression exercise that you're working on, and you can just find the arpeggios and practice playing the arpeggios on any group of strings. Now, right now, I'm just doing my first, second, and third, but we could do the second, third, and fourth strings. Right? I could be going, okay, my C arpeggio, if I'm on my second, third, and fourth strings, it's these 3. It's the 5th fret on my second string and the 3rd string and the 4th string. Or I could come up here and say, let's do the 10th fret on my 4th string, which is a C note. And then nearby that, I have an E on the 9th fret of my 3rd string. And then I will have a G on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. So those 3 notes. Right? And then I could go to G up here. Or I could do A minor here. The idea is just understanding what the notes of the arpeggio are, deciding what group of strings you're going to play the arpeggio on, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it is, and then you find those notes. So these are just simple 2-chord chord progressions, which are really, really easy. But then you're going to want to go to actual chord progressions from real songs. So whatever song you're learning right now, you can just take the chord progression from that and you can apply the chords to it. So for example, we could take G and then D and then E minor and then C, and we could just come up with the arpeggios related to those chords. So for example, for G, we're going to need the notes G, B, and E, which we already found a G arpeggio right here. Right? For D, we're going to need to find the notes D and F sharp and A. And actually, we have that right here. Right here, we have a D right here on the 7th fret of your 3rd string. And then on the 7th fret of your 2nd string, you have an F sharp. And on the 5th fret of your 1st string, you have an A. So that's the arpeggio. And so you could use that. And then for E minor, we're going to need the notes E and G and B. So to find that, we would come up here. And for now, I'm just staying on strings 1, 2, and 3 again. But there, I would have a B on my 1st string, and I would have a G on the 2nd string on the 8th fret. So 7 on my 1st, 8 on the 2nd, and then your E is right there on the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And then for C, we can do the 9th fret right here on the 3rd string again, and then 8 on your 2nd and 8 on your 1st, just like we did before. So I could go G here, D here, E minor, and then C. Now that's an easy chord progression that tons of songs use. Now, right now, I just stuck to my first 3 strings and I kind of moved up the fretboard as I went, but you can do other things. You don't have to stay on the same strings. You could find your G right here. You could do your D here, just as your standard D chord. And then you could decide to do E minor somewhere else. We could do E minor just down here, because it does work as your open 3 strings, your first 3 strings. Or I could just do my E minor right here. So I had my G here, my D here. Then for E minor, I could do it right here, because right here is an E minor chord. So that's my G right here on the 1st string, my E on the 2nd string, which is the 5th fret, and then my B, which is the 4th fret of my 3rd string. And I could just play those. And then for C, I could stay right here and I could just play this, or I could play my the first one that we did. And together, instead of doing it the way that I first did, it could sound like this. Either way, there's lots of different ways to do these, and different places that you can find all of these arpeggios. And so experimenting and exploring your fretboard and looking for these different places that you can play arpeggios and find nearby arpeggios is going to be really, really key to understanding your fretboard. Now let's do one of my favorite chord progressions. This chord progression is based on Hotel California by the Eagles. And this is one of my favorite chord progressions to have students play when they're learning open chords or they're learning arpeggios, because it's such a cool chord progression, but it is a longer chord progression. We have 8 chords that we're going to go through. So the first one, just to simplify this down, and what I'm doing is I'm taking, when you play the intro to Hotel California, you capo up on your 7th fret, and then you play your E minor chord, and then you play B7, and then a D chord, and then an A chord, and then C, and then G, and then A minor, and B7. And so what I'm doing is I'm using those relative chords that you use when you got the capo on, not the actual true, I'm not doing, B minor and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do are the chords that we're going to use, and we're going to find the arpeggios for E minor, for B, for D, for A, C, G, and then A minor, and then B again. And in that order, we get a really cool sounding chord progression. So check this out. I could do my E minor right here. And then find my B, which is right here. Now for D, I could change it and I could go to my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string. And then for A, I could come up here. And then for C. And then for G. And then I have A minor. And then B again. What I'm doing is I have to know all the notes for each chord. So for E minor, I need to have my E, my G, and my B. And then for B, I have to have my B note, an F sharp, and a D sharp. And then for my D chord, I did this on my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings, where I've got my D note right here on the 3rd string, I've got my F sharp right here, and I also have my A. And then for A, C. So for A, I need to have my A and a C sharp and an E. Well, I have my C sharp right here, I have my A right here, and I have my E right here. And so that way, and then I can go to my C, which is going to be my C note here, and then my G note here, and then my E note right here. And then for G, I have to have my G note right here. And then I'm going to have my B and my D. So that way, then for A minor, I could do that, or I could do this, which is the one that I played, because it's actually pretty dang close. And then you use your B again. And so this way I can get familiar with where these arpeggios are. So to take this whole progression together, I would just practice the arpeggios together, running them up and down and linking them together just like you do in a chord progression. So that way I would have E minor, B, D, A, C, G, A minor, and then B again. And that is how you start linking these arpeggios together. The idea is most of the time you want to stay in a similar part of the neck, because when you are playing with a song and you want to change the sound that you're playing arpeggios for lead or stuff like that, you can actually stay pretty nearby where you're at if you know where your arpeggios are. And then you're also not just stuck to a scale, right? A lot of people will complain about being stuck in a scale box, and these are the only notes I can play. Well, finding the arpeggios for the chords will free you up a lot more. And then the notes in scales kind of become stepping stones between the different arpeggios that you're playing over the different chords. And or at least using the arpeggios as your target tones that you land on. And then the scale notes become passing notes. And that is what makes really great guitar players sound awesome. So you can use this when improvising and soloing. You can use it for lead parts. My old band had a song where all I did for the very last chorus, I used a D minor arpeggio up here. All I did is play that D minor shape right here, which is the same as your regular D minor chord. I just moved it up an octave. And the only thing I did is I added on top of it. So I'm playing the 13th fret on my first string, and then I would come through and put my pinky down on the 15th fret, and then raise that up to the 17th fret and back down to 15. All the while, I'm just holding this arpeggio shape. You can do simple stuff like that, and it sounds great, especially in the context of the song. But that's it, guys. That's how you do these arpeggios. You find the chord progression that you want to play them with, or that you're going to solo over, and you find the notes to each of those chords, and you find them in a relatively similar place. And it doesn't have to always be on the same strings. I know I stuck to like mainly the first 3 strings, but a lot of stuff happens on your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string. You can do your 5th, 4th, and 3rd. You can do your 6th, 5th, and 4th. You can do 4-string groups. You can start skipping strings too. So you could do arpeggios that are on your 6th string, skip your 5th, and then do your 4th and 3rd string as well. There's all sorts of cool things that you can do with arpeggios, and it becomes a little bit of a rabbit hole. But we'll do some more videos on that so that we can walk you through doing some deeper dives on arpeggios and using them for different stuff. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that made arpeggios simple for you. All right, guys, that's it. That's some really simple ways that you can practice arpeggios, and you can really expand them and go crazy with this. But like I said, this is one of the best ways to learn your fretboard is by understanding these arpeggios and how they relate to each other. If you can do that, that's going to help you understand the songs that you play better. It's going to help you solo better. It's going to just unleash everything on the fretboard better. So I can't stress enough how awesome and important it is to practice these arpeggios. I wish that when I was starting out, I was teaching myself. Nobody showed me arpeggios. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how they worked. I wish somebody had shown me this. So that's what I'm doing today for you to help make these arpeggios simple so that you can feel like a rock star, even if you're starting out. Now, if you've watched the video this far, I do want to tell you about a gift that I have for you. If you go to my website at simpleguitar.com/top10, there I have a guide for you called the top 10 things to learn on guitar first. And it's 10 things that I teach beginners all the time that get them up and playing music and having fun, playing actual music. I never teach like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or anything like that. So this guide is meant to get you playing real music and having more fun on the guitar a lot faster. So as my gift to you for watching the video today and my way of saying thank you, go to simpleguitar.com/top10, download that guide, and I will catch you in the next video.